The movie begins with a narration that tells us how monsters came from other planets to cause chaos on Earth. According to the narration, some of the monsters are not actually bad, but just misunderstood by the humans. A hero who calls himself the Ultraman came from nowhere to defend the people from these monsters. For 30 years, he's been using his amazing powers to fight these monsters so as to maintain balance in the world. The movie begins in Odaiba, Japan, where we see a young boy called Kenji, playing with his parents, Professor Sato, and Emiko, his mother. We find out that his father is the real superhero, as he is often tasked with saving Japan and the world from dangerous kaiju creatures, for he is the current Ultraman. During their play, Kenji's mom Emiko acts as the villain, while Kenji acts as Ultraman. They have a robot called Mina, who helps them with the cooking and other house chores. Their family is a great fan of baseball, and Emiko is a dedicated fan of the Hanshin Tigers baseball team in the Japanese league, and she tensely watches a match against the Tigers' biggest rival, the Yomiuri. Kenji's parents have expectations from him. Even though he is still just a young child, it is apparent that his both parents' expectations are quite different. Sato wants Kenji to be prepared to become the next Ultraman, following in his footsteps, while Emiko is more determined to make him a baseball player. Their excitement is cut short when they hear an earthquake. Their robot Mina shows them a call from Dr. Onda, who warns Sato to protect his family because one of the most dangerous kaiju, Gigantron, is on Earth. It's his duty to protect the world, so Sato decides to go fight this monster and tells his wife to protect Kenji. Kenji begs his dad not to go, but his dad promises to be back. Sato immediately transforms into Ultraman and goes to fight Gigantron. 20 years later, Kenji is all grown up, but unfortunately, his mom is no more. He traveled with his mom to America, where he joined the baseball team called the Tiger, and he became their best player, which made him really famous. After gaining immense popularity in the American baseball, Kenji has finally returned to Japan with a reason of joining a Japanese baseball team called the Yomiuri Giants. But Kenji's return also has a second purpose. His dad is now old, and it's his responsibility to replace his dad as the next Ultraman. His fans in Japan have so many questions for him, so he attends a press conference where he answers all questions, but gets so angry when a reporter called Amy asks about the death of his mother. Just as he storms out, he receives an alert from his watch concerning a kaiju attack. He fights the kaiju called Naranga, who beats the crap out of him. Kenji is holding back because the people wants him to take down the monster with little collateral damage as possible, but Kenji does not have any idea how to do so. He couldn't hold back anymore and unleashes his powers to land a very powerful punch on the creature. Just during the battle, the Kaiju Defense Force agency captures the monster. They warn Ultraman not to fight Kaijus anymore because he is not an authorized government agent. If he does so again, they will place him into custody. Kenji notices his suit battery is low, and whenever that happens, he loses his powers for the moment. To avoid anyone to find out his identity, he quickly flies to an isolated place in the city where he changes back to his normal self. He sees that the Kaiju Defense Agency can't capture Naranga, but he is fed up on helping people who doesn't appreciate him and decides to go back to his normal life. His dad calls him and begs him to go back because it's his responsibility as Ultraman, but Kenji blocks his dad and decides to focus on the only thing that makes him smile, which is baseball. The scene suddenly takes us to the Kaiju Defense headquarters, where their chief, Dr. Onda, calls a meeting. He talks about how each of them have lost family and friends from the devastation caused by the horrible kaiju attacks, but that is going to come to an end. There is a very powerful weapon under production, which will eliminate all kaijus from their planet. The scene changes to show as Dr. Onda men, who are bringing a case which they will use to complete the weapon, but a kaiju, Gigantron, comes out from nowhere and attacks his men in possession of the case. Kenji trains for his upcoming baseball game, but he feels pain in his right arm. His robot Mina informs him that his right hand has been dislocated from the battle, which makes him wonder how this unappreciative people are worth losing his arm for. He decides to quit from being the Ultraman and leaves that duty for the Kaiju Force Agency. He starts his first Japanese game, but wasn't able to hit the ball right because of the injury in his right hand. He then tries something that has never been done in the history of baseball. He decides to use his left hand to hit the ball, and he gets it right, making the whole of the stadium to chant his name. His father watches the game happily, but his whole mood changes when he receives an alert on a kaiju attack. The attack reaches the stadium, which leads to everyone running for safety. But we notice Gigantron isn't attacking anyone, but it came to take back what belongs to him, which was the case stolen by the Kaiju Defense Agency. Kenji, who doesn't understand the whole situation, changes to Ultraman and attacks the kaiju who poses threat to everyone. The Gigantron in retaliation fights back with his atomic breath. Back to the Kaiju Defense Agency, Dr. Onda orders the agency to scramble all jets, kill Gigantron, and take back the case from it. It is now Kenji realizes what is going on. Gigantron doesn't intend to harm anyone, but only trying to protect a case which the defense agency wants to take away from it by any means possible. It runs away holding the case while the jets of the agency chases after it. Ultraman tells the agency to leave the creature alone as it means no harm, but they warn to use deadly force on him if he interferes. Ultraman decides to try and convince the creature to let go of whatever thing he is holding so the agents might leave it alone, but it doesn't listen. According to Dr. Onda orders, they fire hundreds of missiles at the Gigantron, but Ultraman uses his shield to protect it. Unfortunately, the damage has already been done. The missile brutally injures the Gigantron, and it died in few minutes. Ultraman takes the case to know why the creature is trying to protect it from the agency. He opens the case only to realize it's an egg of the Gigantron. The egg hatches the very moment he touches it, and a cute baby of the Gigantron comes out from it. Observing the agency is in search for the baby, Ultraman travels back to his basement underwater with the baby to keep it safe. After bringing the baby Kaiju safe to his place, something weird starts to happen as the baby Kaiju continuously licks his chest. His robot Mina tells him that what it means is, the baby Kaiju thinks Kenji is her mother. Kenji panics as he is not ready for this kind of responsibility. He has a life, a title to win, but now he is babysitting a giant pink lizard thing. To avoid this kind of responsibility, Kenji wants to take the creature to Kaiju Island, but Mina tells him that the Kaiju Island is nowhere to be found. His Ultraman suit battery runs low, and he changes back to his human form. The baby Kaiju, who doesn't recognize him anymore, begins to cry. Mina tells Kenji it's because she is scared of him as it's only his Ultraman form she knows. According to his request, Mina uses their biggest containment pod to hold the creature. Dr. Onda and his men arrives at the corpse of the Gigantron to discover that its egg has already hatched. He tells his men to find the baby and bring it back to him alive. Kenji's dad pays him a visit, but Kenji is not happy to see him. We find out that when Kenji was little, his parents got divorced because Emiko, his mother, wasn't able to put up with the pressures of her superhero husband any longer. It was the couple's decision to separate for the sake of their son, who never quite understood the reason for this separation. Kenji hates his dad because he believes his father had abandoned him and his mother for the sake of being a superhero. The baby Kaiju is still scared of him, so Kenji comes up with an idea. He transforms into Ultraman and his human form about 5 times, just to prove to the creature that he is the same person, and this actually worked, as the creature stops to cry. He hears the stomach of the Kaiju grumbling. Mina tells him the creature must be really hungry. According to his wishes, Mina brings some nice human meal for the creature to eat, but the food irritates the creature. The baby Kaiju echoes towards the fishes in the ocean, and according to Mina's explanation, Kenji realizes that the baby Kaiju loves fish. He catches hundreds of fish and gives it to the creature, who devours them in minutes. Taking care of the baby Kaiju begins to affect Kenji's routine, especially his baseball career. He doesn't sleep well to keep feeding the baby Kaiju, who is always hungry, and because of this he is always attending the baseball games very tired. Due to this, he wasn't performing well in the games anymore, and he did not only lose a lot of fans, but his coach is preparing to transfer him to another team. Kenji is angry and frustrated. He contacts a reporter he knows very well due to the sensitive questions she normally asks him in his press conferences. Kenji knows she has 2 kids, so he wants to know how she balances everything in her life, taking care of her kids and same time doing her job so well. The reporter decides to give him a clue on how to balance everything, but in exchange, he must fix an interview between them where he must answer all her questions. Thanks to her advice, Kenji begins to bond more with the baby Kaiju and teaches her how to play baseball. To fulfill a part of his deal, he goes to attend the interview with a reporter and tells Mina to take care of the baby while he's gone. The baby wakes up from sleep, and when it looks around but couldn't find Kenji, it begins to cry. This leads to a strange power coming out from her mouth. Mina tries to calm the creature by showing it pictures of Kenji, but it doesn't work. The baby Kaiju uses her newfound powers to break out of Kenji's basement, and Frog jumps into the city to look for her father Kenji. Meanwhile, while Kenji is on an interview with a reporter, he receives an alert message to discover the baby Kaiju is in the city. Without wasting much time, he cancels the interview and goes after the baby Kaiju, who is unknowingly causing chaos in the city in search of her father. Kenji finally finds it, but it unconsciously unleashes her powers on him. The Kaiju Defense Agency chief, Onda, finally finds the baby Kaiju he has been looking for and sends all his men to its location. When his men shows up, they begin to shoot numerous tranquilizers on the Kaiju, which makes it unconscious. Onda tells Ultraman to hand over the creature to them, and they will take no action against him, but instead, Ultraman escapes with the kaiju in full speed. The baby kaiju is in serious pain, so Kenji has no other choice but to call his dad, who knows a lot about these creatures. Kenji's dad, Professor Sato, shows up, and he finds out the kaiju just has a broken arm. With his walking stick, he fixes the creature's dislocated arm. Kenji did not only learn from his father the importance of protecting kaiju species and their ecological benefits, but he also realizes the fine balance that one needs to maintain while being a superhero and a parent at the same time. Sato explains to his son, who still hated him, that he never wanted to leave to turn into Ultraman and fight monsters, but he was burdened by the very personal urge to protect his wife and son at all cost. Dr. Onda is looking for the kaiju baby at all cost, but why? We find out his plans, which is using the kaiju baby to create a super weapon on his own, and as well use it to locate the kaiju island till he can wipe their kind out of existence. He is on a revenge mission because the Kaijus killed his wife and children, or his only happiness. So according to him, these creatures deserves no mercy. Meanwhile, Professor Sato trains the baby kaiju how to defend itself, use its powers, and how to hunt its own meals. Thanks to Sato, Kenji started to balance things in his life. He is no longer losing games and took his team from the last to second position. Just as Kenji bonds with his father, they named the baby kaiju Amy. During their conversation, they see hundreds of drones sent by Dr. Onda to capture the baby. At a very wrong time, the kaiju baby begins to entering her pupal stage, which means she's growing, but unfortunately she's at her most vulnerable moment. The drone release missiles on them, leading to Kenji's father to obtain a life-threatening injury in the process. Kenji, out of anger, changes to Ultraman and destroys all the drones, but what he doesn't know is, that is the least of Dr. Onda's plans. The baby pupal stage is finished, and it turns out she has now developed wings. Dr. Onda sends a robotic Gigantron mother that had been created in their lab in an attempt to reach out to the baby and convince it to switch sides. The baby kaiju leaves Kenji and runs to the robotic Gigantron, thinking it's her mother. Kenji's house is destroyed by Dr. Onda men, and it seemed like his father, Professor Sato, had been killed by this incident. Kenji goes to protect Amy from Dr. Onda and his robot Gigantron. As Ultraman, he goes into a final battle with the gigantic robot. Ultraman gets defeated and gets drowned inside the ocean. Fortunately, Kenji's dad turns out to be alive as he comes to his son's rescue in the form of Ultradad, and the theme of parenthood triumphing over evil is complete when the Gigantron mother also manages to get rid of the Dr. Onda control over it. With this happening, Dr. Onda decided to go with his last option. He tells his men to evacuate from the ship, as the Kaiju Defense Agency must survive. He then transforms the ship into a gigantic robot, with him inside controlling it to engage in an epic battle with the heroes. The Kaijus assist the heroes in the fight, but they are no match. But when Kenji and his dad combines their powers with the Kaiju atomic breath, it took down the robot in a blast. In the end, Dr. Onda realizes that he will not be able to come out victorious in this fight, but still driven by his desire to kill as many kaiju as he can to avenge his family, the man self-detonates his robotic aircraft. Kenji decides to sacrifice himself in order to save everyone else by using his Ultra Shield to stop the blast from reaching the city. Fortunately, he survived, but at the cost of losing one of his arm. And that was how the movie ended. Thank you for watching, guys. If you love animation movies, please subscribe to this channel and keep watching. Bye.